So with that, I will be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, I guess what I'd like to do, just to make sure that we have adequate time for both of our presenters, is to move on to Mr. Kremer now, and then we'll fire questions at both of you towards the end.
Thank you. I certainly want to thank the committee for the opportunity to visit with you this afternoon. I also just want to express my thanks to all of you elected officials for your willingness to serve Iowa. I thank you in particular on behalf of the most vulnerable of our citizens, our children. As was shared, I started my career as a kindergarten teacher, while yet a senior in college in 1973 in Jamestown, North Dakota, a small private college, Jamestown College. I was approached by the head of the teacher education department asking if I might be interested in being a kindergarten teacher. A small town outside of our college community, Montpelier, had a 6-week full-day kindergarten experience. That was the kindergarten experience for the children in that day, helping them be ready for first grade in the fall. I took that opportunity, and I'm very happy that I did. I'll never forget the very first day of school. Our classroom was in the basement of a church 2 blocks away from the schoolhouse. And every day we walked that 2 blocks up to the school to have lunch and play in the playground. And the first day it was time to go to lunch, and I said, let's line up at the door. And they all looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Line up? What's that? You see, I student taught in 3rd grade, and teachers before me had taught those wonderful skills. I learned a great deal during those 6 weeks, and I say a prayer for those children every once in a while. They're in their mid-40s today, and I'm hoping that they're doing well. 2 years later, my wife and I moved to Marshalltown, where we've lived ever since. I loved my work in the schools in Marshalltown. Every role I played as a classroom teacher, as a principal, and as the associate superintendent. When I retired after 34 years of service, I decided I wanted to do something that would allow me once again to have significant direct contact with young people and influence in their life, something that I've missed during my last years in school leadership. So when an opportunity came to work with our homeless youth in the Marshalltown area, it seemed a good fit for me. I serve as a case manager, which is like a life coach for up to 8 young people, young men and women, 16 to 22 years of age, who don't have a safe place to live, helping them move towards self-sufficiency. For all of them, education is a critical element in this journey. Most have not yet graduated from high school or completed a GED. We know, and they understand, that in today's world, without a high school education and additional education and training beyond high school, their future is not very bright. That's why one requirement of participants in our transitional living program at Youth and Shelter Services is being connected to appropriate education. Participants live in scattered apartments in Marshalltown that are leased by YSS while they complete their high school education or attend college, seek full or part-time employment. In many cases, seek help with mental health issues, chemical dependency issues, and learn skills that they need to live on their own. As I share with them regularly, the people of Iowa believe in you, and the people of Iowa believe you are worth this investment. We need you to become self-sufficient and productive so that you can have a good life, and also so that you can be part of helping the next generation. In preparing my remarks for this afternoon, I spent just a few minutes on the internet. I Googled early childhood education just to see what would come up. It wasn't a surprise to me, as I'm sure it wasn't to you, that I found article after article, state after state, country after country, looking to quality early childhood programming as a way to address improving student achievement and building human capital. We're not alone, but we are a leader. My son and and his wife teach in Minnesota. I have brothers and sisters who teach in Wisconsin, who are school leaders in North and South Carolina and in Florida. They know what's happening in Iowa, and they're definitely watching. We can pretend not to know what we know, but the brain research is clear in showing that investments in the early years offer the greatest opportunity we have to narrow the achievement gap and to reduce dropout rates, to reduce the need for remedial programs, and to reduce the prison population. We know getting off to a good start in almost any endeavor is critical to success. Brain development during the first few years rockets along at a pace we can hardly imagine. 700 new neural connections per second. Early nurturing experiences fire the synapses that determine intelligence and behavior. By the age of 5, as much as 90% of a child's intellectual and emotional brain wiring has been set for life. These years are not only precious, they are foundation years that predict the future of the child, and consequently, all of us. Good parents have known the importance of the early years forever. Year after year as an elementary principal, I watched as parents brought their 5-year-olds to kindergarten orientation. It was easy to pick out those children who had been to preschool or at home with a stay-at-home parent who understood the value of a language-rich environment and early experiences to build background, meaning, and vocabulary. It was easy to pick out those who had the opportunity for quality preschool experiences and those who did not. In every kindergarten class, there were children who had already begun to read, and there were those who could not yet identify one letter of our alphabet. The learning gap was already present. It was easy to see the children who had been read to daily, who lived in a language-rich environment, who had people there to answer their many questions and to take them places, and who talked with them about what they were seeing and experiencing. 75% of families with young children today are families where all the adults in the home are working. I say all the adults in the home are working because we know many of our young children are living with only one parent, many with grandparents. While some children have the benefit of quality daycare and preschool, many do not. When the young brain fails to grow at its optimum rate, the results are long-lasting. In Marshalltown and in several communities in Iowa, we have a large and growing population of second language learners. Early childhood education is critical to their success in becoming literate in English. It's important to remember that early childhood education is not only about instruction and learning for students, it's also about building early partnerships with parents, helping them to understand the important teaching role that they play with their children, teaching parents how to help their children, and building relationships that will last throughout the child's time at school. At no time are children more ready and anxious to learn than during the early years. And that's also true of parents. Early child investments will result in a more educated workforce to contribute to the state's economy. That's why business is so interested. I know that with the revenue shortfall looming, this is a difficult time for us to call for spending on early childhood education. Nobel laureate economist James Heckman, as concerned as any of us about spending restraints, advised the President's Deficit Commission that failing to invest in quality preschool education will result in, quote, a deficit in human capital that will take generations to correct, unquote. Heckman believes that dollars spent in early childhood education are spent at a time when they offer the biggest payoff, an investment that pays interest every year for the rest of the life of the child. In fact, The research shows that for every dollar invested in high-quality early childhood education, we save $17 in welfare, criminal justice, and social service costs. That's an amazing return. We live at a time when we expect instant gratification. It'll take 18 years for a baby born today to contribute to our economy. But ignoring what we know could result in far greater expenses to Iowa's education and human service budgets long before that child turns 18. You'll never hear anyone say that less school is better. You've been involved in discussions about longer school years, longer school days, more time for student learning, and more time for remediation. I certainly prefer that we invest in quality, evidence-based prevention programs, including early childhood education for all 4-year-olds. I believe it's fiscally prudent as well as socially responsible. Iowa took a bold step in making quality early childhood education available to all 4-year-olds. Certainly this is a good time to hear from educators and parents about what they're learning as they implement early childhood programs and to make needed adjustments. When I talk with local educators in Marshalltown, transportation is one of the greatest challenges they face in delivering preschool services to our children. The working poor in particular many times lack the resources and the social network to get their children to and from school. There are certainly other challenges, but we're on the right track, and I encourage you to make the tough choices to continue providing the opportunity for early learning for our 4-year-olds. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for your presentations. I think we'll open it up to questions and comments now. And Chair's prerogative, I'm going to ask the very first one. Some folks have suggested that we cut back the public financial support to only children from low-income families. I'm a little concerned about that. I wondered if you might comment on what the impact might be of excluding kids from middle-class families, both on those kids and on the kids from the low-income families. The potential there of an income-segregated system is bothersome.
Well, I can speak to the research. One of the things that the research shows is that all children benefit from preschool education, not just children from low-income families. The effects of preschool tend to be stronger for low-income children, but the effects for the upper-income children range around between 74 and 87% of the effect size for children from upper-income families. So it makes sense. We want all of our children to succeed. We need all of Iowa's children to succeed, not just children from poor families. So that would be one argument right there. The other argument is how children from lower income families benefit from being in classrooms with their peers from upper income families. And I was just reading a piece of research recently, this is 2009 research, that was looking at children's expressive and receptive language, because we know that children from low-income families lag behind in language skills in both expressive and receptive language. And so this piece of research was looking at the effects of peers' language. And what they found is that when children are placed in programs with peers who have better language, they develop better language. And it just makes sense. If you take all of the children who have very poor vocabularies and you throw them all in a program together, their vocabularies aren't going to grow very much. But when you put children in classrooms where they're exposed to better language models, where they are having to communicate, where they are hearing children using more advanced language, their language skills improve. So, and that's just one piece of research, but I think the research shows that children in lower income families do better when they're placed in integrated programs.
And my experience would support that. I spoke with the Director of Special Services in Marshalltown this past week, and when I was a principal, the only children that received free preschool, of course, were identified as special needs students. And we had preschool programming for them. One of the benefits that she's already seen is exactly what you said. The models, the strong language models now in the classroom with children with special needs and lower language development has been a wonderful, has had a wonderful impact on the learning of the special needs children. I also would be very concerned about where that income level would be set. Certainly, my children went to preschool because I could afford it and I saw the value in it. But there are a large number of families that may be determined that you can afford preschool, but wouldn't make that choice because they have less discretionary income, and therefore children can get that opportunity. I'd be concerned about that.